All right, so this month has been an interesting month. We've definitely had some tragedies that we're going to get into in a moment, but ultimately, life is still good for a lot of people. I would say the economy's up. Everyone seems to be doing better than they were a few years ago. I remember, I mean, we Vince, you got to remember, dude, we started business in like late 2000s when the economy was literally crashing. It's been kind of an uphill battle.
Yeah, for sure.
We've kept clients, we've kept work, we've kept our creative work going, but it's been a struggle, right? At the same time, and I look around and I see people that have lost a lot during that time. They're doing better now. They are recovering. People seem to be happy. Like things are going pretty well. I know that there's a lot of people that don't appreciate the politics. There's a lot of people that don't appreciate some of the things that are going on in the country or some of the things that are going on around them. But ultimately, we still live in the best country in the universe, in the history of the universe. And we live in a place and time that literally seems like anything's possible still, you know, and it's a good thing. And so when I read last week about Anthony Bourdain, it's a little over a week now ago, killing himself. And then a week before that, Kate Spade, the designer, took her own life. I just thought, man, like, what is it? Like those people, it hit me kind of hard, because I have this philosophy that if you are committing yourself to improving the life you've been given, because I think we're all handed like a blank slate. We're all handed a life to do something with. I think we're handed this this body, this mind, to be able to create more. To like God creates us, and then He gives us the keys and the tools and the ability to go from there and create other things. And I have this philosophy that if you're actively engaged in creative work, or if you're actively engaged in the calling that you're called to, doing the thing that you were put on this earth to do, that it's kind of a safeguard against depression and against some of the things that can kind of take you out personally. But then I read about Kate Spade, the designer who committed her whole life to creative work. And then I read about Anthony Bourdain, the chef, author, speaker, writer. We know him from his shows. Very creative guy who committed himself to creative work and doing something, and then he went further to try to like really change culture. And both these people really did change culture, and these people were committed to doing that, but they still couldn't find peace in the end, and they ended up taking their own lives. And I don't know. It really hit me hard. And so I started just kind of digging a little bit and started thinking more about that. But what do you think about that? I mean,
Well, the Anthony Bourdain, I don't know a lot about Kate Spade, but the Anthony Bourdain thing is interesting. I think I called you the moment I found out.
Right.
And I was like, dude, Anthony Bourdain. I think I was so shocked by that story because, or that tragedy, I should say, just because he seemed just so happy. Like, here's a guy, like, you know, a lot of people, I would say a lot of millennials aspire to travel and be foodies and, you know, do the whole travel the world thing, you know, and
huge influence on millennial culture.
Right.
This 60-year-old guy, 61-year-old guy was a huge influence.
Kind of a hippie, you would think, like in the sense of like just kind of live life.
Ex-rocker.
Like, dude, like, so I think when I heard his story, like, or heard this tragedy of him, you know, committing suicide and the way that he did it, I think it shocked me because you just, in your mind, you're like, here's a guy that just has it figured out, you know, like, if you can aspire to be, so I think I've heard you say this, like, dude, if I could do what Anthony Bourdain does, like, I'd be stoked for the rest of my life. Like, you know, just travel, documentary style work, and like going to different cultures and like talking culture, so forth and so on. So I think I was pretty shocked, but it's sad that we're not as surprised, I think. You know, I'm shocked, but not surprised in the sense, like, yeah, like, these people that seem happy you had Robin Williams, you know, a couple years ago, another guy that was in the spotlight, seemed seemingly happy, made other people happy, made other people laugh, but behind the scenes was, you know, struggling with depression or whatever the case may be with life or whatever. So yeah, definitely.
Well, it blows my mind. So what's interesting, the first thing that I thought of when I thought of these people is I thought, well, I didn't know them. You know, we knew of them from TV, and you know that I mean, anytime you do some sort of work on a stage or in front of a camera, like you're bringing forth your best self. Like you get into a certain mindset. You put the makeup on, you literally like, and kind of figuratively too, and you show up as a certain character, right?
Right. You put on the happy face, right?
And that's all we
It's
saw.
Hey guys,
right?
It's
and
all
so
good.
we knew
Right.
him of the best version of himself, right? Kate Spade, I don't know much about her at all, but
Right.
we knew her creations, and so like we knew like the good parts of their lives, but we didn't know about the negative parts of their life. But what threw me off about this was I've been listening to people talk about Anthony Bourdain specifically, who knew him really well, and nobody really saw it coming. They didn't say like I think who was it, like Rose McGowan, like I don't know her connection. She like knew his girlfriend or something. Like she talked about it. She came out and said some stuff like defending basically his girlfriend, saying don't blame this on her because I guess he was in a relationship with this Italian actress, and you know maybe things were rocky. I don't know what it was, but then you know maybe that had something to do with the suicide. People assume, right? Like
Right.
they just automatically make their own conclusions, which also blows my mind that everyone just jumps to conclusion of this because we want answers, right?
Right. No, for sure.
Even if we didn't know the person specifically, like we want answers. But going back to that, I just these people that knew him really well, they didn't see it coming either. And it kind of blew their mind. I listen to Joe Rogan's podcast sometimes, and he knew Anthony Bourdain well enough, like he's been hunting with him before, and he just said the guy seemed awesome. He seemed like he was on top of the world. And people, one of his close friends was on CNN the night, like a couple nights later, and he said that he seemed like he was better than ever. And so what's funny, I started talking to my wife about this, and she's a nurse. She's an ER nurse, and she knows enough about suicide to the point where like people would come into the hospital. She knows enough to know the signs of whether or not you should put somebody on a suicide watch or not. And she said that one of the interesting factors about suicide is when people are suicidal, they will actually get pretty motivated. Like they'll get like an energy to be able to kind of put their affairs in order and kind of put things in order and like give things away. Like if you know somebody who seems normal and but they've had struggles in the past, and they start giving stuff away, like their pet, like if they give away their dog or they give away like a possession that is something that they really care about, and that's like a sign that they are planning something. And that's another thing that kind of blows my mind, is that usually suicide, it's not like you just decide in the moment you're going to do it. From what I've read and from what I've seen, people seem to plan it out. Like they seem to like think about it for a while. Like I've been down pretty low. And I may have had some thoughts that like, why do I need to be here? But I like dismiss them as fast as they come. Like, and this has just been a rarity in my life, but I kind of understand it, but I don't fully understand what these people are going through. And so I guess what I want to kind of discuss tonight, and this is kind of it's a tricky one because neither one of us are psychological, neither one of us are psychologists, neither one of us are health professionals, mental health professionals at all. Vince, you are a creative, and I'm known in some circles as a pastor, which I guess gives me some right to talk about it.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I just want to talk about what I believe is the opposite of having that thought, of the opposite of going through the mindset of thinking that you can actually do something like this or would actually do something like this. And when you think of depression, like what do you think is the opposite of depression? Like what do you think is like the opposite state of that?
Because the opposite of depression. I don't know. That's kind of off the cuff. I mean, obviously, most people would say happiness.
Right. So that's what most people would say, right? And so at first thought, that's exactly what you would say. But really, that's kind of two sides of the same coin, right? Like happiness, like people that are really, really happy have a tendency to be really, really sad. And like that, like if you can be like really like insanely stoked 1 minute, then chances are you can be insanely sad in the next minute. And that's like how bipolar people are, right? Like they're really stoked, like insanely stoked on everything, and then they're really down the next moment. And that's like the whole manic stage and manic thing. And so I was thinking about this. I was thinking like what is it that really makes a difference in people's lives that would never consider killing themselves versus somebody that would? And I think one of the, and this is a hypothesis, this is just a discussion,
right?
But I think it has something to do with really believing in yourself and believing that you are here for a reason, for a purpose. I don't know anything about Anthony Bourdain, obviously, or Kate Spade, but I was thinking about him and where he was in his life, and this is all assumptions, but this is a guy who was on top of the world, who had, probably what he'd always worked for, probably more than he had hoped for in his life. Like he actually, I heard an interview from him, from his own words, and he talked about how surprised he was that he was able to become famous later in life. Like he wrote a book later in his life. He was a chef, then he wrote a book. I think he became somewhat famous in his 40s, kind of late. And he, one of the quotes that I read was that he felt like he had stolen a car. Like he was fortunate enough to become famous later in this age. And so the guy probably literally had everything that he wanted. And I don't know. I go back to that story of the Tower of Babel and why God stopped them from building the Tower of Babel.
Not this story again, man.
No. I'm not going to go deep on this, but
I'm just kidding.
But the idea that really hit me about that story was, I really think that God didn't want them to stop having something to work toward. Like he didn't want them to stop having something to look forward to. It's summertime, right? Like we have a vacation coming up that we're all taking together. We're really excited about it. We've never taken family vacations together, and that's something to look forward to. You know, I know it's little, but to me, it's not. It's a big deal. You know,
to you,
awesome.
It's
a big deal. Like I think those little things kind of keep us moving forward a little bit. You know, and it's not. I don't know. It's maybe, and I'm just guessing here. This is totally a hypothesis, but maybe when you feel like you've got everything, like you feel like you've got everything you've ever worked for, you feel like you're at the very, 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 very top, and you only see, down as the way to go. Maybe that's a sad place to be,
Well, that's interesting because we talked about the other day, just like the idea of like, not so much the idea of getting stuff, but the idea of something being stripped away from you. We talked about this, I think, in another podcast a couple days ago or a couple weeks ago. Sorry. But yeah, I think a lot of people live with anxiety, like what's like everything's going good, right? It's a mindset. It's a belief. Like you're living in a belief system that everything is inherently good. Like the economy is good. So you're spending more money, and you spend more money because your action follows your belief, right?
Right.
Your action is that you're spending money because you really believe the economy is really good.
Right.
But when you stop believing the economy is good, what do? You stop spending money. You hold back, right?
Sure.
And so if you're at the top, like you're saying, in your mind, you start thinking about when is this going to end? Like when do the good times end? And that can definitely like lead, I think, into some, I don't know, suicidal thoughts. Again, a lot of this can be like we talked about, not in the podcast, but chemical imbalances with people and just really understanding, the psychology behind why people commit suicide. But yeah, I do think that has a big, like the idea of things being stripped away from you.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think a lot of it comes, like you said, like a belief in yourself and believing that inherently like things are getting better, that things like that tomorrow's going to be a better day in some different way.
You're a really optimistic guy.
I am, but
and I see you in the ups and the downs. I see you when you're bummed. Today you're a little bummed, and I'm like,
I was bummed 5 minutes before this podcast.
You're bummed, but not bad. Just
right.
Things,
no,
right. But how are you going to get back to your optimistic state now? Like some stuff happened this week that, was an inconvenience, let's say.
Oh yeah.
Right. How are you going to get back into an optimistic state?
Well, again, I think the action's going to follow my belief. Like I really believe like there's some things that I need to do. creatively in business, and like I'm gonna follow through with those things. Like I'm gonna do those things.
Why do you feel that way? So
think
the word belief is going to be a common theme here, because I really have noticed, read, like observed, experienced that your beliefs, how you see the world and how you see yourself in the world, have a huge impact on everything, on your perspective, on your mindset, on the way you feel, on the way you treat other people. Huge effect.
Right.
So there's something like if people are depressed, they have gone to a place where they believe there's no hope. Like fully depressed, like fully, like legitimately depressed. They've got to a place where they believe there's no hope. And yes, there are chemicals involved.
Right.
And yes, there are pills you can take to make you feel better. But are those pills like really doing good long term? I don't know.
I don't know either.
I don't know, dude. It's like it's messing with the chemicals in your mind.
If the doctor says take them, keep taking them though.
Yeah, and I'm not definitely. I'm not espousing not taking what has been prescribed, but. For me personally, I was prescribed some stuff for my head, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I was prescribed Adderall for my mind,
right?
Because I had some problems focusing, and it wasn't like I just had little problems focusing. I was legitimately forgetting my keys inside the house every day. Like I had some serious issues with focus and serious issues with just everyday things. And so I took those pills, and they just put me in a weird space mentally, like messing, like when you can take a pill and it just makes you like think completely different. It makes you have energy. It makes you just like a completely different person. But yet, like at the same time, I'm like missing out on a lot of things. It was like when I took Adderall, it was like that movie Click. Like with Adam Sandler.
That's so crazy.
You know that movie?
Yeah.
You know how he hits the fast forward button and like his life passes by? Like that's how I felt. Like I wasn't even there. And so I came to a conclusion that I'm like, I can't take this anymore. Like I can't do these anymore. So I stopped, and it sucked because my mind was all messed up. Like I didn't have energy when I woke up in the morning. And so I started drinking yerba mate teas, which helped a little bit. But I had to get to a place where I had to deal with this without taking pills. And so I'm not saying that my case is the same as everyone, but I'm not just talking out of my butt right now. Like I'm saying that like from somebody who took a pill that actually helped for a while, like it wasn't the final answer for me.
Correct, yeah.
And everyone has to make their own decision on that. But
you asked me, you said what makes you like the optimistic, like, hey, like, you know, how are you going to go from like this, you get bummed out and you move forward. And I think a lot of people, they look at life very linear. And what I mean is like, they're like, it's either really, really upset or things are bad or things are really good. And there's one track line to either way. And I don't look at it like that. Like, you know, there's gonna be times in your life where business is good and you're going to be on top, but I don't feel like I get pushed backward on a linear scale, like on one line. I feel like it isn't like, oh, well, now I'm backwards, now I'm forward, now I'm on the same line. I feel like I'm just like more like not so much like a ping pong ball, but like I don't even know the game you'd expect. More like a bouncy ball where you get bounced around, not so linear, and like one bounce leads to something else, but that something else could be really, really good. And I know that's being overly optimistic. And a lot of people say, like you said, if you're overly optimistic, you have this belief that things are going to work out. And for me, at the end of the day, I used to tell when I used to, I spent a large part of my 20s just talking to teenagers about life. And I always talked to them about, you know, the worst thing that can possibly happen to you. And I always said death is probably, and a lot of people see death as a solution. Like, you know, you don't have to think anymore, you don't feel anymore, whatever. But really at the end of the day, like, the idea to, not exist anymore, cease to exist. Yeah, thank you. I didn't do my Peter Pepper pick the pickled peppers fast enough today, so yeah, I wasn't going to try to say cease to exist, but I did it. Okay, but I would say the idea of that is like that's the worst thing that can happen to you, and in that, for those who believe or that have in God or whatever, they're going to go to heaven and actually things get better. So it's not like the end all to all things, but at the same time, knowing that's the worst thing that can happen, like we still have, like we talked about this in another podcast, like the chance to bounce back or getting another chance at bat or whatever. Right. Like I really do think like that in your failures, there's a lot of growth and a lot of things that can happen. And dude, like I feel like I've taken so many steps backwards, and it does get hard. Like when people say the struggle's real, like it does get real. Like when you have bills to pay and you don't know, how this job is going to work out, and where, in 5 years from now, will you have the same job, and will you have the same paycheck, and will all your kids be healthy?
Right.
There's just so much to think about, right? It's just like but you have to be able to know, like, if you get bounced off, not a track, but if you get bounced off, your thing called life.
Your track.
Yeah, I wouldn't say a track, because track's very linear. I think people I feel like, if you're trying to go from here to Los Angeles and you're on one path, one track, and you get bounced off, it's very hard to get back on a path. But that one bounce might lead you to San Francisco, or it might lead you somewhere else. But that doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing. And I guess that's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like if we bounce instead of getting so just you know what I mean? Like, being able to bounce in life is a lot.
You're saying that things aren't always black and white.
Exactly, right. I don't think
when you see things hard black and white all the time with everything, that when you expect it to be black and it turns out to be white, you're just throwing off your whole game. Like, you're throwing off
I think a lot of people are thrown off there.
Well, I think that's the problem with religion, honestly.
Yeah. No.
Like, I think that's one of the issues why people are so mad and so upset with religion, because they're taught these rules, right? This is 100% black, this is 100% white, and if you cross this line, then bad things are going to happen. And what happens is people cross the line, nothing bad happens to them, and they're like, well, screw this, I'm not going to do this anymore.
Right.
And I think that's a huge issue, and I think that there's a problem with that. I want to write the book someday. Basically the title is like Black, White, Dark, Light, and the idea is that not everything is black and white, but everything is dark or light. Like, life is, the decisions you make in life are leading you toward the light, or they're leading you toward darkness. Like, that's the truth, like, toward it. I really do believe that 100%. I don't think that every decision is like that, but the big decisions, like big moral decisions, you know what I mean? But it's not about rules. It's about knowing what's right in your heart, knowing like the right thing to do versus the wrong thing to do. Like, we know inherently, we know what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be doing. And if you do, like, let's say you believe in your heart that it's wrong to steal, and like you believe like 100%
right,
like that's wrong, and it's wrong to steal. And of course it's wrong to steal.
Right.
But let's say that you start, I don't know, taking supplies from work, like office supplies, right?
Right.
And it's no big deal.
That stapler had some chrome on it.
Stapler, pins, whatever, no big deal. And at first when you realize that you had an ink pen from the office, you like feel guilty.
Well,
like,
then I'm done.
Man. Like,
I've taken a lot of ink pens from the office.
I doubt anybody's this crazy, but maybe they are. And so they do that, but then all of a sudden they're like, well, I took that pen. That's okay. You justified it to yourself. Like, that's okay. I took that pen. Maybe it's okay to take this notebook, And then eventually you're like, well, maybe I can take this. Maybe I can take that, And this is a weird example, but like the idea is like if you compromise with your own values, it's like you're committing an offense against yourself. Like, you're committing an offense against your own personal beliefs. And I think a lot of people do that. I think that they have these like beliefs, and they do this thing that's against what they believe in, but then they do so much that it becomes really ambiguous in what they're doing and how they're living. And I think that eventually you get to a point where it's like, well, what's the point of any of this? What's the point of doing anything good? What's the point of it? And this is extreme, but I don't know if if there's a straight line from taking pens from work to just total ambiguity and just being disassociated with the reason for living. But at the end of the day, like that's what happens to people. Like, they stop being disciplined with themselves, and they stop having structure with themselves. And I don't know, like it's just interesting. We know somebody really well who has a lot of structure in their life, and like when their structure is broken, what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
They're thrown off. They're like way thrown off. And I just think as humans, we are meant to live in a certain way. And I think that when we break those human rules, things happen, and that's when negative stuff starts to pop in.
Well, I would say this too. I do think like having an overall black and white, not worldview, but just like I would say ethos that you believe things inherently are getting better or whatever the case may be. like, I think that's a good place to be. Honestly, I know that sounds weird because I really don't really believe in the sense of like things are so black and white, but I do think that if you don't have a very black or white stance on things are getting better and things are going to be okay, and I don't even know what that looks like, like things being okay for some people may be different than being okay for me, but I think being a survivor and knowing that things are going to be okay no matter what situation you're in, I think a lot of that has to do with being content. Yeah, this idea of being content, that you're going to be okay. Like, I always struggle with the fact that, I want to be a good provider, a good dad for my kids. And that's why I go to work every day, and I'm trying to I think if it was just me, it sounds really selfish. My wife's like, yeah, I can totally see this. But if it was just me, like, I think I would just jump in my car and a tent and like just be a nomad and like travel and like go fishing on the coast and have my surfboard and like not have this crazy worry, but then like have these real encounters with people and like, just live life with people. I think I'd
see you. I don't know if you'd be a nomad. I think you'd like move to another place and like have like a culture and like around you, you'd, like build like some culture, some weird like creative culture where everybody's around. Because you're a social guy. Like,
you're saying I'd be a cultist. Cool.
Maybe. Yeah. You start a cult. Yeah, exactly. I don't know.
Jeremy, are you in on this cult, bud? Jeremy's not in.
Jeremy's
all right, dang it.
Yeah,
dang it. I thought I had a cult. No, but I'm just saying like.
But what do you do? Let me ask you this.
Okay.
What do you do when you're bummed, when you're down, when you're
I think my first reaction when I'm not bummed is I self-internalize. I just told you right before the podcast. So right now in my life, like I hate right now, one of the things that it's weird because you can't control it. And it's something I can't control, but I like to be okay with everyone. Like I want to be in a place in my life where I'm at peace with everyone. I want to be a peacemaker.
Right.
And I know that's almost unachievable because like you can't control how other people are going to feel about you no matter what you do, you can't be a people pleaser. And I'm not so much saying being a people pleaser more than just being a peacemaker with people.
Right.
Just at the end of the day, I want to be able to have good relationships with people and, know that I'm just being honest and, that there's a good, whether they like me or not, the foundation's there. Right.
Right.
But I think when I get bummed out, when things go, I think a lot of it, I come back and I look at my own self. And you talked about this last week, was being able to be honest with yourself. Like I always go like, is it me? Like, am I like, if there's a problem or situation or, if I'm bummed about something, was I the cause of it? And if it was, then, how can I fix that? And how can I make it better next time? And a lot of times if I'm bummed about something, it's something that I could have controlled or had spent more time on something or whatever, and I could have helped out control that situation. Now, there's times in our life, obviously, where things are going to happen and we can't control those situations and we can't control those things, and overcoming those just come with time, a healing and time and process. And you've seen a lot of this in pastoring where people just need time to process things and get over it. But at the end of the day, like I said, with my kids, like if I ended up losing my job and we didn't have money and things like, dude, I would take my kids and we would figure it out and I would just make it work. And I think knowing that I know how to survive and that I feel like I can survive is good, and I think, and again, everybody's different. I think the way people process, but I think if you can get to a place where you really process, like at the end of the day, no matter what happens, like I can make this work and survive. And what you said was key, feeling like you have to be here for a reason. Like I feel like I have to be here for my kids. Like, and I want to be there even more. Like I want, and it sounds cliche, but like seriously, my kids, you asked, it's funny. We talked a lot before the podcast, I guess, but you said, how do you know when your kids are adults? And I have a kid that just is going into middle school.
Right.
I'm a 6th grader and dude, life is getting real. Like this kid's going to come home with some gnarly stories. I remember myself as a 6th grader. I'm like, oh, here we go. Like girls and stories and hanging out late. And like, I'm like, if I ever catch my kid smoking weed or any, I'm just thinking of my teenage self, and I'm like, oh, my poor parents, like, what did I put them through? But, so I'm like those things, but I want to be there for my son. Like, and I feel like I have to be there. Like I couldn't even, there's no option for me. There's no option to dismiss or like walk away or, run away. None of those things, even there's no A, B, or C. It's like, I got to survive through this thing for the good or bad. And that's marriage. I mean, you can even talk about marriage for a second. Like a lot of people opt out of marriages now because they don't want to work through the tough stuff, and maybe for some people there's things going on and divorce is, obviously it's needed. There's some things that you just can't get over, I guess. I don't know your marriage situation, so I don't want to judge, but I think a lot of marriages end too easy because there's an easy way out. you know, and I'm not saying every marriage is different. So, you know, I don't know every circumstance, but being able to work through things, man, is definitely that survival, like the instinct of survival and knowing that things are going to be good and we'll work through it. And
so,
man,
so I don't want to go too long on this.
Sorry.
It's kind of a deep episode. We just went straight into it tonight.
Did I just get super sidetracked on that?
Which is gnarly. No, it's good.
But
I looked up a story that's an older story, but I don't know why. But this story just kind of came to mind this week when I was thinking about all this stuff. And I was trying to think of like what is the opposite of like wanting to kill yourself. And I was thinking of stories of people who just have like a gnarly will to live, you know. And I thought about that guy from the movie 127 Hours. His name's Aaron Ralston, right?
Yeah.
And I started reading. I found an article. And I'll put it in the show notes. But there's this picture of him online. If you just Google Aaron Ralston pic or Aaron Ralston photo, it'll pop up. There's a picture of him that he took of himself, a selfie, while his arm is stuck in the rock, right?
It's
and
gnarly.
He's looking back, and he just has like an oh crap moment on his face, you know? And what's crazy about that is he took that picture 48 hours into him being stuck with his arm stuck between the boulders. And if you don't know the story, look it up. It's a really interesting story. This guy was just out on a day hike, and he was a rock climber, and he didn't tell anybody where he was going. And he took off and just went out to Utah and went climbing, and he slipped and fell, and a giant boulder fell and smashed his arm to where he couldn't get out. So he was stuck there. And so after 48 hours, he took this like selfie with a camera that he had. And I was just thinking about that because I'm doing like the intermittent fasting, you know. And I was thinking, the other morning, I didn't eat till like 1 p.m, and I was thinking about how hard it is, you know, to not eat until 1 o'clock or noon, and then I started reading this story, and this guy literally like 48 hours he's sitting there not eating, not, you know, he barely has any water, has barely enough water to survive, not even enough, which is crazy. But he takes this picture, and that's just 48 hours in. It wasn't until 5.5 days later that he decided he had to cut his arm off to survive. He was stuck there without food for 5 days in that position, and all he had with him was a dull pocket knife. And so he started, this is gruesome, but he started cutting his arm, and he realized he couldn't do it with the knife. And so at some point he realized that he had to break his arm by just violently moving his body around in order to get it free. And he talks about this in this article, and he refers to this whole ordeal as a traumatic blessing. This is because he endured both the extremes of pain and absolute elation of being free after it was done. So like excruciating pain, but then after he was done, he was like, he was free.
Freedom.
He didn't have his arm anymore, but I've heard people say, well, I wouldn't want to live without a limb. Well, I don't think that's true. I think you would want to live if you're actually faced with that dilemma. You know what I mean? You can survive. They have some pretty cool.
I always think about
robotic arms now. You know, like prosthetic arms.
I always think about like surfing, and I'm like, I can live without an arm.
Yeah,
like,
right.
I'm good. Like it's worth it.
You can live without an arm and with a really cool shark story. Like you can,
super cool shark story. Make the news.
I mean, I don't want it to happen,
I got pitted, and that shark came out and got me.
Yeah. So this whole I kept reading this article. He said that he describes this moment as the idea of like being reborn, because he'd already accepted he was going to die, you know, but then he was able to overcome it. And what happened was really interesting about this is after he, you know, was rescued, and after he recovered physically, he felt like he was invincible. He felt like he was on top of the world. Like, dude, I just survived this gnarly situation where I was stuck in a cave for 5 days, and I cut my own arm off, and I survived. Like, and he, you know, everybody's interviewing him. He's literally went from this rock climber kid to one of the most famous people in the world because of this situation. And he was just up. Everything was great. And during this time, he fell in love, and this girl, like, he was just on top of the world. Like, things were going great. But then this girl that he fell in love with, she ended up breaking up with him, right? And it says that in this article that he went into a depressed state so much that he wanted to kill himself. Like he became suicidal because this girl broke up with him. So like he had this like moment where he like had this will to survive, to be able to like cut your own arm off and get out of that situation, just insane will to survive, to being suicidal because this girl broke up with him that he fell in love with.
Interesting.
Rejection, right? Like rejection was a huge thing.
That's crazy.
And then I guess he ended up losing a few friends to suicide. Like they were close to him. He was feeling suicidal, and I guess at some point, like he really wanted to kill himself. But I guess he met somebody else who became his wife, and he had a child, and he ended up having a family. And he said that was the thing that healed him. That was the thing that helped him out. And it made
Wow.
it made me think. It really did. I thought about all the things in life that you could succeed to. Like
Right.
it's huge. Like on YouTube, if you type in, success or how to be the biggest entrepreneur or the biggest whatever, all these kids want to be the best of the best of the best. And they want to succeed. They want to drive Lamborghinis. You were even telling me this week. Like, look at this photographer who's driving a Lamborghini.
I just couldn't believe. I was shocked that this photographer.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's all this success, but then ultimately, when it comes down to it, like life itself is found in relationships.
Yeah,
I've
crazy.
caught myself recently being just the happiest I've ever been in moments, like the happiest. And you know what it is? It's when I'm playing with my kid.
It's crazy.
Like, dude, just insanely happy. Like insanely happy.
But just not relationships, like deep, meaningful relationships,
Yeah,
like lasting
right.
relationships. Because I think there's something to be said. But that's gnarly to think, like the guy, like you said, this will to survive, but his will to survive had to do with connections and connection to people more than
Right.
it had to do with just this, the idea of just like, I'm going to live another day, or whatever.
He says later that his family was the ones that helped him through that, even though he didn't know them. He said that he like believed it was possible.
I
to
think
have
in the
that.
movie, I don't know how true to life the movie is with, you should put that in the show notes. That's actually a good little movie.
Yeah,
Have
it's
you
very
seen
good.
it? But he was, I think it like alluded to like holding on for his family or something.
Right.
Like it's something like that.
And I
But
just
yeah,
think
that's
about
crazy.
I think about people that lose relationships and they lose something really valuable
Yeah.
because of stupid decisions or stupid thinking. And I think, man, like, don't do it. Like, if you're in a place and you have a husband, you have a wife, you have children, you have like relationships that are worth holding on to, friends, even like brothers, sisters, like, do whatever it takes to hold on to those
For sure.
relationships. I'm not saying that that's the end all. I'm not saying that that's like the thing that's going to save you, but it could be. It really could be.
Well, like I said, at the end of the day, like my will to live has a lot to do with my family, you
Yeah.
know, and like what's going on with them. And,
Right.
it's I do think connections, dude, meaningful connections and relationships are huge,
Right.
And if you don't have those, and like you said the other day, you said that you have a good network of people. Like
Right.
if you were going through a down time, you would be able to call 4 or 5 people
I
that
did.
you know.
And my friends were there.
Yeah, and
100%.
so I think that's huge, and a lot of people don't have those deep meaning relationships. And I think when you get to a place where, and social media, I hate every time we do a podcast, I'm like, when social media is so bad, and we're on it
Right.
all the time. But I do think that sometimes you look at other people's lives in the social media realm, and everything's good and happy, and then you build yourself yourself up on that tower, right?
Right.
That you can't tell anyone that things aren't going good because of the embarrassment that can come with it. I'm watching this show right now with my wife. She's into it. It's called Supermart. It's like The Office inside of a like Walmart.
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's like
All
called Superstore or anything. Jeremy, are you a fan of such shows? Anyways, but there's a girl in one of the episodes. She makes up that she's dating the district manager, and she's like sending herself flowers and watches, and like she's photoshopping in one of the things. She's like in one of the Walmarts per se, and she's photoshopped with one of like the company computers. She's like photoshopping herself with her like husband in London, or the guy she's supposed to be dating in London, and they end up finding out that she's making it all up. And I know it's a far-fetched story. You got to watch this show, by the way. But anyways, and she gets super bummed out. But at the end, they find out, and she's just like, I'm just glad that I was able like to get this off my chest because I couldn't live up to the lie anymore. And I think a lot of times we build ourselves so far up that we don't know how to walk ourselves back down, from just being honest with people around us. And hey, it's okay to tell other people I'm not doing good, or it's okay to tell other people like, hey, like
Not there yet.
life isn't going as planned,
It's 100% okay. It's normal.
But it's so weird that we come to a place where it's like when we see, it's like, oh, hey, everything's going perfect.
Great.
I'm making millions dollar bills, and
Right.
like, check out my car. But like, it's really hard for us just to be honest with people and say, things aren't going so good. And there's been times in my life where it's like when you see somebody and you're just like, they're in a better place in life, you want to be able to say, yeah, I'm also in a good place in life. And obviously if you don't have that connection, you're not going to pour out to them. And I'm not saying just pour your life out to everyone, but at the same time, like being able to be honest with people around you and just say, hey, like I am struggling with some stuff, or like, I wish I was here in life, but I'm not. And like, I just want to let you know. So,
well, I hate to end this conversation, 'cause I think it's a good conversation to have. But my wife is coming and we're going to dinner and I'm excited about it. But let me just say this. If you are out there and you have had suicidal thoughts, you have had depression that leads you to even thinking about taking your own life, realize that it can and will get better if you hang on. And here's my advice to you, okay? There is a hotline you can call. I've never called it. I don't know much about it. Of course, it's you can Google it, the Suicide Prevention Hotline. They know what they're doing as far as I know. So if you have no one else to talk to, please Google that and call them. But if there's anybody in your life that you can talk to, a friend, a family member, someone that you know from work, a pastor at church, anybody that you feel like you can trust, talk to them, and get the help you need to get you through this time, because life can have some moments that are really difficult, but then on the other end, it can have some moments that are just amazing, that just take you by surprise, that just blow your freaking mind. And so if you're out there and you're wondering is it worth living? Yes, 100%, because you never know what's around the corner. You might think it could be bad, but it could be amazing. So just realize that life is worth it, and talk to us, talk to whoever. You can find me on Facebook. My name's Josh Vietti. I'm not the violinist. So if you find the guy with the violin in his hand, that's not me. I'm the other guy. Send me a message. I'll talk to you. But just please realize that there are so many good reasons to just keep moving forward, that things will get better. I always think of that proverb. I don't know even where it comes from, but the proverb of this too shall pass. And that's true for the good times, and it's true for the bad times. And so if it's really, really good, realize that, a struggle might be around the corner and you need to prepare for that. But if it's really, really bad, also realize that good times could be around the corner. And it's not even about feeling good and thinking about, what's in it for me in this life. Sometimes it's about what can you give to others, because maybe there's somebody in your life that's going through the same thing. Maybe they're in a worse spot than you. And so keep your eyes open and think about the fact that you could be someone else's saving grace too. And so love you guys. I mean that 100%. I don't care what you've done. I don't care what you've been through. We really do care about you, and there's other people that do too. So believe that, and believe that God himself, God put you on this earth for a reason. I believe that 100%. If you don't believe me, talk to him, do it. I recommend it. So anyway, love you guys, and we will see you guys around. Thanks for listening.